Hi everyone, Miss Dow here. We're going to go over Chapter 2, Forms of Contamination. Chapter 2 is quite long, so it will be completed in 2 parts. Please make sure that if you are viewing this video and screencast that you make sure you watch both Part 1 and Part 2. Okay? So, how contamination happens from a different variety of ways. It can come from animals used for food, air, contaminated water, dirt, chemicals used in the operation, natural contaminants such as bones in fish, and then people. People can accidentally contaminate food, or people deliberately contaminate food. And we hope that people do not deliberately contaminate food because that's just not nice. Contaminants come from a variety of places. Most of the time, it's the fecal-oral route, which means that people poop, they do not wash their hands, and then they prepare your food. Most of the time, when an individual gets a foodborne illness, it is usually transmitted person to person, and 98% of the time, it is through another person's feces. Delicious, right? It's very disgusting. That's why it's important that we practice good personal hygiene, keeping our hands clean, washing them all of the time. But the number one way is fecal-oral route. So to prevent that from happening, we want to make sure we wash our hands after we go to the bathroom. We can have feces on our hands that gets on the food, and then food with feces is eaten. Occasionally with E. coli, that would come from animals. It could be that cows' intestines were nicked during the fabrication process, and then you're exposed to cow feces and then get E. coli that way. But 98% of the time, it's person to person. It also happens if you come into contact with a person who is sick. For example, if an individual has Hepatitis A and they are showing symptoms, and you are a high-risk population, it's highly likely that you would get that as well. It also happens from person to person if we sneeze or vomit into the food or food contact surfaces, or if we touch dirty surfaces or equipment and then we touch our food. So again, excuse me, a lot of this could be prevented simply by washing our hands. Our big 6 pathogens. These are the 6 pathogens that are the most concerning to us. So I'm going to go over all their names. Some of them are quite difficult to say, and then we're going to go over these in detail. So the first one is Shigella, SPP, and then we have Salmonella typhi. We have non-typhoidal Salmonella, and then we have Shigella toxin-producing Escherichia coli, Hepatitis A, and Norovirus. You need to be absolutely 100% familiar with these 6. So, how does bacteria grow best in food? What do you think? On a pH scale, which acidity level do you think bacteria grows well? A, B, or C? If you said B, you are correct. Bacteria grows best in food that contains a neutral pH. If you change the pH of the food product, you can change the way the bacteria grows. So your high acidic foods will not grow bacteria. Your low acidic foods will not grow bacteria. But the foods that contain a neutral between like 5.5 and 8.5 pH is where the majority of your bacteria is happening. So at what temperatures do bacteria grow most rapidly? A, 41 to 135, or B, 70 to 125? You said B, you are correct. Remember, 41 to 135 is our temperature danger zone. 70 to 125 is the super danger zone. We want to keep food out of 70 to 125 as much as possible, because when our foods are between 70 and 125 degrees, then that's when our bacteria is growing the most. So, conditions for bacteria to grow. We have to have several things. We have to have what we call FAT-TOM. Food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. Moisture is one of these. So the water activity available in food can do bacteria growth. The higher the value, the more available the moisture. The more moisture, the more likely it is you have bacteria. So what do you think? Does this food need time and temperature control to keep it safe? Cut lettuce. Yes or no? If you said yes, you are correct. This lettuce has a high moisture content, has a lot of water in it. So yes, it absolutely needs to be time and temperature controlled. We also consider cut lettuce to be a ready-to-eat food, and ready-to-eat foods are controlled by time and temperature. Remember that we can prevent most contaminations in items that do occur in order to make people sick, and one of the major things that we can control is time and temperature. So, what bacteria do you think this one is? I can be transferred to food or equipment by food handlers with feces on their fingers. People become contagious within a few hours of eating me. I am often linked with ready-to-eat food. Excluding staff with diarrhea and vomiting can prevent me from causing further illness. This is the Norovirus. Recently, within the last year, Chipotle is the restaurant that got in a lot of trouble for patrons, their customers getting sick from Norovirus, and it was actually caused because of a staff member who went to the bathroom, who was sick with Norovirus, diarrhea, did not wash their hands properly, and then came back and prepared their food. So Norovirus is often linked with people to people, and so if you have an individual within your establishment that has Norovirus, you must exclude them from the operation. Excluding means they cannot even come in the door. They are not allowed to do paperwork. They cannot work the register. No, no, no. They must stay away until they are symptom-free for 24 hours, which doesn't seem like that long, but that's what the FDA recommends. Okay, second one. I live in a person's bloodstream and intestines. I'm commonly linked with ready-to-eat food and beverages. I'm in a person's feces for weeks after symptoms have ended. Excuse me. Washing hands and cooking food to required minimum internal temperatures can prevent me, and I only live in humans. Which one do you think this is? If you said Salmonella typhi, then you are correct. What's pretty interesting about this one is it only lives in humans. It's only transmitted person to person. It cannot be transmitted via animals. Also, washing hands, so good personal hygiene, and cooking food to required minimum internal temperatures can prevent this. So, both of these bacteria that we have seen right now can both be prevented simply by taking some precautionary measures. But what is interesting about Salmonella typhi is it is in an individual's poop, their feces, for weeks after the symptoms ended. So it's imperative that individuals who have been diagnosed with Salmonella typhi, they probably need to be in a restricted type of area for a period of time after their symptoms go away so that they're not really working with food to potentially contaminate someone else. So restricting means that they could work the register, they could do the paperwork, they could clean the establishment, they could stock things, but not specifically working with food. All right, number 3. I'm found in the feces of people that I have infected. Flies can transfer me. I am linked with food easily contaminated by hands, but washing hands can prevent me. If you said Shigella SPP, you are correct. One of the biggest problems that I have in restaurants is when I go in and there's flies everywhere, the first thing I think of is Shigella. Flies must be controlled in an operation to help prevent Shigella. The number one way Shigella is transferred in an establishment is flies. So if you go to a restaurant and there's lots of flies, don't eat there. What happens is that the flies are maybe at the water facility, they're on the poop, they fly around, they go to your restaurant, they land on something, somebody shoos them away or maybe kills it with their hand, or it lands on your food, and then there you go. But washing hands can really help prevent, but also flies. Flies is the biggest thing. I promise you, if you see flies in an operation, turn around, walk away. Okay, number 4. I'm often linked with ready-to-eat food. I'm often transferred to food by food handlers who have feces on their fingers. Excluding staff with jaundice can prevent me from causing illness. Normal cooking temperatures do not destroy me, and I may not show symptoms for weeks, but still may be infectious. If you said hepatitis A, you are correct. Hepatitis A is pretty serious. Once you get hepatitis, you have it for life. There's really not a cure for it. They can treat your symptoms, but when you contract it, you have it forever. A lot of times it's linked to ready-to-eat food, as you can see. So one big key factor here would be to make sure that you're washing your fruits and your vegetables so that they are not contaminated. We use a vinegar and water solution to try to help change the pH to reduce bacteria, but also kill bacteria. So it's imperative that our ready-to-eat foods are cleaned. If you haven't noticed a common theme here, we're already on number 4, and all of them deal with human feces. So washing our hands is a big one. Jaundice, that's when your skin turns yellow and the whites of your eyelid turn yellow. And that's a pretty good indication that someone has an issue with their liver, which typically would indicate an issue with potentially hepatitis. If a staff member has hepatitis, you must exclude them from the operation. They are not allowed in the door. They are not allowed to come by. They cannot be in the establishment. They actually have to be cleared from the regulatory authority, so the public health department, and they have to have the note for their physician not showing symptoms for a minimum of 7 days before they can return to work. If one of your patrons on staff, one of your employees, on staff has hepatitis A, it is a serious, serious problem. So it's something that needs to be monitored. It's something that needs to be taken care of right away. All right, the 5th one, I can be found in the intestines of cattle. I produce toxins in a person's intestines, which cause illness. I'm found in raw ground beef and contaminated produce. And cooking ground beef to required minimum internal temperatures can prevent me. If you said Shigella toxin producing producing E. coli, then you are correct. As long as we cook ground beef to our minimum internal temperatures, it's highly unlikely that you will get E. coli. If you eat a lot of undercooked beef and not good quality beef, and it does not come from a good, reputable supplier, then yeah, you're at risk for getting E. coli, especially if you're a high-risk population. Okay, number 6. Many farm animals carry me naturally. The severity of a person's symptoms depends on how much of me is eaten. I've been found in tomatoes, peppers, and cantaloupes. Cooking poultry or eggs to the right temperature can prevent me from causing illness. Non-typhoidal salmonella. So this type of salmonella is carried naturally in our animals. Depending on how sick you get is how much you eat. It can also be found on ready-to-eat foods like tomatoes, cantaloupes, so those are important that we wash them. As long as we cook chicken, poultry, turkey, and eggs to the right temperature, it's highly likely that you'll get sick. Okay, number 7. I am a seafood toxin. I am produced by pathogens found on certain fish. You can find me on tuna, bonito, mahi-mahi, and I'm produced when fish is time temperature abuse. Okay, this is histamine. Histamine is a natural thing that our body actually produces, but if it is found in fish and then you consume it, it can actually make humans sick. So the only way to prevent histamine from being overly produced inside fish is to make sure that they are not time temperature abused. I'm going to stop here at number 8 so I can go to part 2 of the video. We'll pick back up here momentarily.